There is a bucket sitting next to a wood stove somewhere in this country right now, and in the morning somebody is going to carry it out to the burn pile and dump it. That bucket weighs about 20 pounds, and in it, by weight, is roughly a pound of potash and about 9 pounds worth of agricultural lime. If you walked into a farm store this afternoon and asked a man to hand you those two things in a bag with a picture of a leaf on it, he would take between $9 and $14 from you and thank you kindly. You made that bucket for free. You made it by staying warm. And you are about to throw it in a hole in the ground or dump it out behind the shed where the rain will get at it. And I am going to tell you plainly in a minute why the rain is the worst thing you can let happen to it, worse than throwing it out at all. Now I want you to sit with this. A man burning 3 cords of good hardwood over one Indiana winter makes about 110 pounds of ash. That is 5 or 6 of those buckets. And here is the part that turned me around. And it is the opposite of what every list on the internet will tell you. 5 or 6 buckets is not a little bit of fertilizer. 5 or 6 buckets is more than a 2,000 square foot garden can safely take in a year. It is nearly 3 times more. The problem was never that you did not have enough. The problem is that nobody ever told you the number. So you either threw it all away or you dumped the whole winter's worth on your tomato bed in one Saturday afternoon and wondered why the leaves came up yellow with green veins in them like little road maps, and why your potatoes came out of the ground covered in brown scabs like they had been sick. My name is Reuben Esch. I am Amish, and I farm in LaGrange County, Indiana, and I am going to be honest with you the way I always am, because honest is the only thing that makes a video like this worth the half hour you are about to give me. I have gathered the whole of this, the ash and the lime and the soil and all the rest of the plain methods my family uses, into a book over at reubenesh.com. It is there if you want it. I will not bring it up again. Now let me calibrate something for you before we go one step further, because I have seen the claim and I will not repeat it. You will read in a dozen places that a 5-gallon bucket of hardwood ashes has about as much potassium in it as a 50-pound bag of commercial fertilizer. That is not true. It is not even close to true. Hardwood ash runs between 3 and 7% potash by weight. 20 pounds of it, at 5%, gives you about 1 pound. A 50-pound bag of 10 carries 5 pounds. So it takes 5 buckets to match 1 bag on potassium alone, and that bag also carries 5 pounds of nitrogen and 5 of phosphate, and your bucket carries none of the first and hardly any of the second. I will say that again because it is the single most important sentence in this whole video. Wood ash has no nitrogen in it. None. Not a little. None. And here is why. And once you see the simple sense of this, everything after makes plain sense. A tree is mostly carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen, and it built all of that out of air and water. When you put a match to it, the fire takes back exactly what the air gave it. The carbon goes up the chimney as carbon dioxide. The hydrogen and oxygen go up as water vapor, which is why cold stovepipe drips. And the nitrogen goes up too, because nitrogen burns off at temperatures your stove passes before the kindling is done. Everything the tree pulled out of the sky, the fire gives back to the sky. What it cannot give back is what the tree pulled up out of the ground with its roots. The minerals: potassium, calcium, magnesium, a little phosphorus, a whisper of the trace elements. Those cannot burn. There is nothing left to burn them into. So they sit in the firebox as a gray powder, and that powder is not ash the way most folks think of ash. It is the mineral skeleton of a tree. It is 50 years of that oak reaching down through the clay and pulling up the good stuff, handed to you in a bucket, sorted and concentrated and ready. The chemists call what is left carbonates, potassium carbonate mostly, and calcium carbonate. The potassium carbonate is the one the old folks called potash, because they made it by putting ashes in a pot with water. Pot, ash, potash. There is no mystery in it, and there never was. So here is the thing I want you to hold on to for the rest of this video. And it is the reason wood ash confuses everybody. It is one gray powder wearing 3 different hats, and all 3 come out of the same chemistry. And if you only know about one hat, you will get hurt by the other 2. The first hat is food. That is the potassium carbonate, and it feeds your plants. The second hat is lime. That is the calcium carbonate, and it changes the sourness of your soil, whether you asked it to or not. The third hat is lye. That is what the potassium carbonate becomes. The instant water touches it. Lye takes the fat off a pig hide, and it will take the skin off your forearm and the sight out of your eye, and it does not care one bit that you are a good person doing a thrifty thing. Stay with me. I am going to tell you all 3 slow. Let us take the second hat first, the lime, because it is the one that does the damage, and it is the one nobody explains. Soil is either sour or sweet. That is what my grandfather called it, and I have never found a better word. The English call it pH, and pH is only a number that counts how much loose hydrogen is swimming in the water between the crumbs of your dirt. More loose hydrogen, more sour, lower number. 7 is the middle. Most garden vegetables want to sit between 6 and 6.5, a touch on the sour side, and there is a reason for that which I will get to. Here is the part that catches folks out. That number is not a regular number. It is a stacking number, and every step is 10 times the last one. A soil at 5 is 10 times as sour as a soil at 6, and 100 times as sour as a soil at 7. So when a fellow says his garden went from 6.5 to 7.5 and he cannot understand why the tomatoes sulked, he is not describing a small move. He took 90% of the sour out of his ground in one afternoon with a bucket. What the carbonate actually does is simple enough to draw with a stick in the dirt. That carbonate ion is greedy for hydrogen. Water carries it into the soil, it grabs the loose hydrogen, and it leaves as carbon dioxide and water. It eats the sour. That is all liming is. It is not adding sweetness. It is removing sourness, one grabbed hydrogen at a time. Now, why do vegetables want it a little sour instead of dead center? Because your plant cannot eat a mineral that is locked to something else. It can only eat what has come loose into the water. And every mineral has its own window of sourness where it comes loose, and the windows do not all line up. Down at 5, aluminum comes loose, and loose aluminum burns root tips and stunts a plant so quietly you will blame the weather. So you do not want it too sour. But above about 6 8/10, phosphorus starts shaking hands. With all that calcium you just added and locks into a compound, the root cannot pry apart. Iron locks up. Manganese locks up. Zinc locks up. And here is how you know it happened. And this is the test nobody gives you. Go look at a young leaf, up near the growing tip, not an old one. If it has gone pale yellow, but the veins are still dark green, so it looks like a little green road map on a yellow page, that is not hunger and not drought and not a bug. That is iron lockout. 9 times out of 10 in a garden that got ashed, it means the pH went past the window and the iron is still down there in perfectly good supply. It is right there. The plant just cannot reach it. And you will do the natural thing, which is add more. And it will get worse. That is the cruel part of it. The ground is not empty. The ground is locked. So before I give you the rate, I am going to make you do one thing, and if you will not do it, then I would honest to goodness rather you threw the ash away. You have to know which way your ground already leans. Ash only helps a sour soil. On a sweet soil, it is not neutral. It is harmful. If you farm over limestone, and a great many folks do, your ground may already sit at 7 2/10, and every bucket you add pushes your garden further into lockout. You cannot see it or smell it or feel it between your fingers. And I will say plainly that the old rub it between your fingers test that gets passed around tells you the texture of your soil and tells you exactly nothing about the sourness. Texture tells you how fast it drains. Sourness tells you what your plants can reach. Do not let anybody sell you the one as an answer to the other. There are two ways to find out. The kitchen way is crude, but it is free, and it takes 4 minutes. Take 2 spoonfuls of soil from the root zone, 4 inches down, not off the top. Put it in a cup and pour in a splash of plain white vinegar. If it fizzes and foams, your ground is already sweet. It is carrying free lime, and you should go put that ash on your compost pile instead, or give it to a neighbor with sour ground. If it does nothing, wet 2 more spoonfuls into mud in a second cup and stir in baking soda. If that one fizzes, you are sour, and ash is your friend. If neither fizzes, you are near the middle and you need a real number. The real way costs between $9 and $27 depending on your county, and it is the best money spent in any garden I have ever kept. Your county extension office will run a soil test. Send them a pint of dirt taken from 6 or 8 spots across the bed, mixed in a clean plastic bucket, never a galvanized one, because the zinc off galvanized fouls the reading. They send back a paper with your pH, your potassium, and your lime requirement in pounds per 1,000 square feet. That paper answers in 2 weeks the question you would otherwise guess at for 10 years. And if your potassium already reads high, which it does in a lot of long-tended gardens, you do not need the food hat at all, and you are left playing with the lime hat and the lye hat, both of which can hurt you. Now, here is the parts list, and it is short, and the total is honest. 1 metal can with a metal lid and a galvanized ash can runs about $22 new, though an old milk can with a lid costs nothing. 1 metal scoop or a flat shovel, not plastic, and I will tell you why in the safety block. 1 5-gallon bucket for measuring and 1 empty 2-pound coffee can for small beds. 1 pair of unlined rubber gloves, $3. 1 pair of sealed goggles, not glasses, the kind that sit against your face, $4. 1 dust mask, $1 or so. And 1 soil test from the county, $9 to $27. That is it. Call it under $40 the first time and nothing at all after that. Forever. For as long as you burn wood. Now I will tell it slow. Step 1 is the burn itself, and this is where the whole thing is won or lost, because ash is only as clean as what made it. Burn wood. Only wood. No treated lumber. None. The green-tinged deck boards and fence posts sold in this country before about 2004 were pressure-treated with a preservative that carried arsenic in it, and plenty of that lumber is still sitting in barns and scrap piles waiting for somebody to be thrifty with it. Fire does not destroy arsenic. Fire concentrates it. 1 scrap of that board puts arsenic in your ash, and your ash puts it in your carrots, and your carrots put it in your grandchildren. There is no amount of that worth the heat. No painted or varnished wood, no plywood, no particle board, no pallets, unless you know the pallet. No charcoal briquettes, because briquettes carry binders and fillers and sometimes lighter fluid. No colored magazine paper, no plastic, plain untreated wood, and plain newsprint, and nothing else. If you cannot tell what a board used to be, it does not go in my stove, and that rule has never cost me a thing but a little firewood. And burn hardwood if you have the choice: oak, hickory, maple, beech. Hardwood ash carries roughly double the mineral of pine or spruce ash, because the tree itself carried double. Softwood ash is not bad. It is thin. You need more of it to do the same work. Step 2 is the gathering, and here is the part most folks get wrong, and it is the part that will burn your house down. Wood ash holds live coals, not for an hour, for 3 days, and I have found a red one on the 4th. Ash is one of the finest insulators there is, which is why the pioneers banked the fire with it. A coal buried under 6 inches of ash has no wind to consume it and no cold to reach it, and it sits there patient as a stone. When you scoop it into a bucket and set that bucket on your wooden porch or in your garage beside the mower gas, You have not carried out ash. You have carried out a slow fuse, so it goes in a metal can. Metal can, metal lid, and the lid goes on. The can sits on bare dirt or concrete. Not on wood, not on a deck, not on a porch, not in an attached garage, and it sits at least 10 feet from anything that will burn. It stays there 3 days before it is touched again. You scoop with metal, because a plastic scoop meets a live coal and melts, and you never scoop into a paper bag or a cardboard box. And I do not care how careful you think you were with the damper. Every fire season, this country loses houses to a bucket of ash somebody was certain was cold. Every one of those folks was certain. Certainty is not a fire extinguisher. Step 3 is the storage, and this one surprised me most, and it is worth the whole video by itself. Keep it dry, bone dry, sealed, under a roof. Here is why. Remember the food hat, the potassium carbonate. The chemists call it hygroscopic, a long word meaning thirsty. It pulls water right out of the air, and once it is wet, it dissolves completely, the way sugar does. And if that water runs off, or drips through, or drains out the bottom of your pile, the potash goes with it. It leaves. The calcium carbonate does not leave. Calcium carbonate is barely soluble. It stays put. So a pile of ash left behind the shed for one rainy month is not a weaker ash. It is a different substance. The rain washed the food out and left the lime behind. You have a pile of pure pH change with none of the feeding, and you will spread it thinking you are fertilizing, and all you are doing is pushing your soil toward lockout with nothing to show for it. That is exactly backwards, and you will never know it happened. Wet ash is not spoiled ash. Wet ash is a trick. It looks like the same gray powder. It is not. And that is precisely how our great-grandmothers made lye. They put ashes in a barrel, poured water through, and caught what ran out the bottom, and that brown liquor was potassium hydroxide, and they cooked it with fat and made soap. 8. The leaching that ruins your fertilizer is the same leaching that made every bar of soap in every farmhouse in this country for 200 years. Same reaction. One is a loss and one is a harvest. The only difference is whether you meant it. Before I give you the rate and the spreading, let me pause here for a moment. If you want to lower your bills, waste less, repair more, stretch your groceries, and run a steadier home, my wife and I run a community for exactly that. The Amish home saving system, and you can ask the two of us questions whenever you get stuck on something like this. The link is down in the description. That is all. Back to the ash. Step 4 is the rate, and this is the number the whole internet is missing. 20 pounds per 1,000 square feet per year. That is a level 5-gallon bucket per 1,000 square feet. That is the cautious number, and it is the number I use, and it is roughly what most extension offices in this country will print if you ask them. For a small bed, forget the bucket. A 10 by 10 bed is 100 square feet, so it gets 2 pounds. And 2 pounds of ash is about 1 2-pound coffee can filled level, not heaped. 1 coffee can per 10 by 10 bed per year. Write that on the wall of your shed. That is the whole rate. Some offices will let you go to 50 pounds per 1,000 if you hold a soil test showing your pH is genuinely low, down at 5.5. If you have the paper, use the paper. If you do not, use 20, and you will never hurt a thing. 20 is slow, and I will be honest and say so. On heavy clay, it might move your pH 0.2 of a point in a season. On sand, it moves faster, because sand has no buffer in it to resist. This is not a lime job in an afternoon. This is a nudge, given yearly, forever, for free. And forever is a long time to be nudged. Step 5 is the spreading, and there are 2 mistakes in it. The first mistake is dumping. Never dump a scoop at the base of a plant. Ash carries salts, and a concentrated pile of it against a stem draws water backward out of the root and burns it. And you will lose the plant and blame the weather again. Broadcast it thin, the way you would throw chicken feed on a still morning, walking backward so you are never standing in your own dust. The second mistake is leaving it on top. Ash on the surface takes one rain and sets into a gray crust that sheds water like a shingle, and now you have roofed your own garden. Work it in. Rake or fork it into the top 3 or 4 inches within a day of spreading. Once it touches damp soil, it starts working within a couple of weeks, faster than agricultural lime by a good margin, because ash is finer than lime is ground, and fine means more surface for the reaction to happen on. And the timing, 4 weeks before you plant, is plenty, and fall is fine too. Everybody argues about this, and it matters far less than the rate. The rate is the whole ball game. Nobody ever hurt a garden with the calendar. Plenty of folks have hurt one with a shovel. Now here are the 4 places ash must never go, and I want you to remember these more than you remember anything else I have said. Never on potatoes. Never. And I want to correct something you have been told, because you have almost certainly read that ash is fine around root vegetables, and that advice will cost you your potato crop. There is an organism in the soil called Streptomyces scabies, and it is what makes those rough brown corky scabs on a potato skin. Sour soil holds it down. Below about 5 2/10, it can barely function. Sweeten that ground past 6, and you have not merely allowed scab, you have invited it and set it a place at the table. Potatoes are the one crop where sour is the whole defense. Keep them in a separate bed and keep the ash downhill. Never on the acid lovers. Blueberries, azaleas, rhododendron, raspberries, holly, pin oak. Blueberries want to sit at 4.5 to 5.5, properly sour, and a bucket of ash in a blueberry row is not a mistake you fix that year or the next. Never with nitrogen, and this one nobody tells you. Do not mix ash with fresh manure. Do not spread ash and then spread urea or ammonium sulfate on the same ground the same week. Here is the mechanism, and it is plain. Nitrogen in manure and in most cheap fertilizer is ammonium, and ammonium is stable in slightly sour conditions. Raise the pH, and the ammonium hands off its extra hydrogen, turns into ammonia gas, and leaves straight up into the air. You paid for that nitrogen, or your cows made it, and you just gassed it off. You can smell it happening. That sharp barn smell is not a smell. It is your nitrogen leaving. So keep them a month apart. The same rule holds for your compost pile. A cup or 2 of ash per wheelbarrow load is fine and helps. A bucket of it kills the pile, drives the nitrogen off as gas, and stalls the whole thing cold. And never on seedlings. Ash goes on bare ground before the crop, or on established plants. Never on a young thing with soft roots. And now the safety word plainly, because this matters more here than in almost anything I show you. Wood ash is caustic. I do not mean irritating. I mean caustic, the way drain cleaner is caustic. And it is the same family of chemical. Dry ash on dry skin is mostly harmless. Ash plus sweat, ash plus dew, ash plus the water in your eye, that is potassium hydroxide, and a fresh ash slurry runs a pH between 10 and 13. Remember the stacking. 13 is 1,000,000 times further from neutral than 7 is. What that means in the flesh is this. An acid burns you, and it hurts right away, and you know it, and you wash it off. A caustic does not hurt right away. It saponifies. It turns the fat in your skin into soap, quietly, and it keeps going down through you as long as it is there, and the pain comes later, after the damage is done. That is why lye burns are deep. Your body does not sound the alarm in time. So, gloves, unlined rubber, every time. Sealed goggles, not eyeglasses, because you are throwing a fine powder and a puff of wind puts it exactly where you are looking. A dust mask, because the same thing that saponifies your skin does it to the lining of your lungs, and that does not heal the way skin heals. Long sleeves. And if you get it on you, flush with running water a full 15 minutes by the clock, not 15 seconds, And do not put vinegar on a caustic burn, no matter what anybody tells you, because that reaction throws heat, and you will have a chemical burn and a thermal burn in the same spot. Water. Lots of it. Long time. If it goes in an eye, flush on the way to the hospital, not after. That is not me being dramatic. That is me being accurate. And keep the can where children do not go and where the dog does not go, because a dog will walk through it and lick his paws. Now let me tell you honest what this does not do, because I said I would. It does not feed your garden. It feeds 1/3 of your garden. It brings potassium and calcium and a little magnesium and some trace minerals, and it brings no nitrogen at all and very little phosphorus. Your plants will still be hungry. Ash is one leg of a stool, and you have to find the other two from your compost and your manure and your cover crops. It does not fix bad soil. It changes one property, the sourness, and if your trouble is compaction or drainage or drought, ash does nothing for you and will likely make it worse, and it does not repel slugs. I know you have read that it does. Here is the honest version. Dry ash is unpleasant to a slug and will turn one back, and it is dry for one night. One dew, one sprinkle, and by 4 in the morning it is gray paste, and the slug crosses it like a bridge. To keep that barrier, you would have to renew it every single evening. Nobody does that, and I will not pretend I do either. Now, let me tell you the part that got under my skin, and I want to be careful how I say it. Walk into any farm store in March and look at the shelf. There is a bag with a picture of a leaf on it that says soil sweetener, and it is ground limestone. $8 for 40 pounds. Next to it, a bag of green sand, $21 and change, sold as a slow-release source of potassium and trace minerals. Next to that, kelp meal at $29. Every one of those bags is honest about what is in it. I am not accusing anybody of lying. The bags are true, but look at what they have in common. Every one of them is a bag. Every one of them is empty by August. Every one of them needs you to get in a vehicle next March and come back. Now go look at your stove. There is no bag. There is no barcode. There is nobody in a warehouse who gets a little richer when your firebox fills with gray powder, and no salesman anywhere whose children eat because you understood that potassium carbonate is thirsty and calcium carbonate is not. There is a great deal of money in a thing a man must buy again every season, and there is no money at all in a thing that appears in his own house for free while he sleeps. So the bag gets the shelf and the aisle and the picture of the leaf, and the plain gray powder gets carried out to the burn pile. I do not call that a conspiracy. A conspiracy needs men in a room agreeing to keep something from you, and I do not believe there was ever such a room. It is worse than that, and stranger. Nobody had to arrange it at all. It arranged itself. A thing that can be sold gets studied and packaged and advertised and put where your eye falls. A thing that cannot be sold gets forgotten, not because anybody decided to forget it, but because forgetting it costs nobody anything and remembering it earns nobody a dime. That is the honest difference. It is not who is against you. It is who has a reason to teach you and who does not. And here is what the forgetting actually cost you. Let me do the math, honest and small, because I will not inflate it. A 2,000 square foot garden. At my rate, you put down 40 pounds of ash a year. 2 buckets. What you did not buy is about 18 pounds of pelletized lime, call it $4, and 2 pounds of potash, which in the organic bag runs another 11 or 12. Call it $16 a year. Over 20 years, $320. $320. 20 years. That is not a fortune, and I am not going to stand in my barn and tell you it is. If somebody promises you a bucket of ash pays your taxes, he is selling you something. But that is not the number that matters, and here is the one that does. 5 or 6 buckets a winter, and a safe use of 2, which means you are standing on 3 or 4 buckets a year of surplus every year, forever. that most folks would be glad to have and cannot get. Give it to the neighbor with the sour clay. Trade it. Put a couple load in the compost. The thing you actually own is not $16. It is that you never have to go anywhere, in any year, no matter what the trucks are doing or what the shelf looks like, to get one of the three things your ground needs. That is not about being cheap. That is about being free. So here is what I want you to do this week. First, today, get one metal can with a lid and set it on bare dirt 10 feet off the house. Before the soil test, before anything. That one is about the house not burning down. Second, take 2 spoonfuls of dirt out of your garden, 4 inches down, and put white vinegar on it and watch. 4 minutes. If it fizzes, you are done. Ash is not for your ground, and you just saved yourself a season. Third, if it did not fizz, get on the phone to your county extension office and ask what a soil test costs and how they want the sample. $9 to $27. Do it now, in the off-season, when they are not swamped. Fourth, find a 2-pound coffee can, wash it, and write on it with a marker. 1 can per 10 by 10 bed per year. Hang it on a nail by the stove where you will see it, because the number is the whole thing, and a number you have to remember is a number you will get wrong. Then come back and tell me what you saw. Tell me in the comments what county you live in and how old your place is, because the age of a house tells me what your ground has already had done to it, and I read every single one. And tell me this, did your vinegar fizz or did it not? I want to know how many of you have been dosing sweet ground with lime for years because somebody wrote a list and never told you to check. And if you have an old method from your own grandmother, the ash barrel, the soap, the way she banked the fire, put it down there. The little family methods are exactly the kind of inherited knowledge that gets lost when nobody writes them down, and the comments on this video are how we save them. Next time, I am going to show you the ash barrel itself, the leaching, the lye, the float test with the egg, and how my grandmother knew when it was strong enough without a single instrument in her hand. It is the natural next step after today, because today you learn to keep the water out of your ashes, and next time we let it in on purpose. That is how the careful old folks did it. That is how it is still done in any farmhouse that remembers.